the government spent $500 million and trained this small group of Syrian men. I don't know, it was like 40 or 50 guys, and they all defected in like the first 2 or 3 weeks. That's it. So they took the weapons we gave them, the supplies, the skills, and were gone.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has firmly rejected any possibility of U.S. military intervention in Mexico, declaring that the country's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. Her remarks come after reports surfaced of a secret directive by President Donald Trump that authorized potential military action against Latin American drug cartels, including those operating in Mexico. Sheinbaum stressed that no U.S. troops would ever be allowed to set foot on Mexican soil, though security analysts note that less overt measures, such as drone strikes, remain a possible concern. The statement highlights growing tension between the U.S. and Mexico over such topics as security, trade, migration, even as Mexico continues to benefit from the USMCA trade agreement. So the question is this, and I'd love to get your thoughts. Mexico's president says the U.S. Army will never set foot in Mexico, even to fight the cartels. Do you think that's purely about protecting sovereignty, or could it also mean that the two countries will work together in a quieter, less visible way? And why would she take such a firm stance? Does she see protecting sovereignty as more important than tackling the violence that's been devastating parts of Mexico? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you have to take a firm stance to start, and then you negotiate your way down, right? So I think you have to say that just to save face in your own country, right? You have to say our sovereignty is the most important, because we think our sovereignty is the most important. You have two people coming in at that level. And then, of course, there's going to be negotiations. Look, she just handed over, what was it, these 23 cartel senior bosses. It was announced today or whatever.
Yeah, or a heavy hitter was, I think, yesterday. I remember specifically seeing, I don't recognize the name because honestly, I can't keep track of the volume of them, but I believe that was yesterday.
Yeah, and they announced that they're going to transfer a bunch of them, I think, to like U.S. prisons, and they're going to go through the justice system. So there's deals going on, right? At the end of the day, she has to save face. She has this cartel problem on her own soil, and things are going to get handled, obviously, behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I started talking about, oh, they'll just come here to train, but it's not I mean, it's very open source. I mean, there is collaboration. I think you're right. I think this is a little bit of, hey, we are always going to stand alone, but and then on the other hand, they're like, so we're still good for that training evolution up in Arizona, right? Because we're going to send our guys up there to train. Do you think that's a better approach, though, as opposed to, I'll be honest, I don't want to see U.S. personnel taking kinetic action in Mexico? Do you think it's a better approach to just train their people and send them back? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's complicated, right? We don't want U.S. troops on their soil, so maybe it's more of a quiet special ops thing. But remember, we trained special forces there, and they became the Zetas. So the other thing is, when you give these capabilities and this high level of training, you don't know what's going to happen with that training. I mean, look at Afghanistan. The training is now proliferated to all the terrorist groups that we gave and thought we were giving to the good guys. So it's very complicated when you start training foreign forces.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You want them to be able to act on their own, but again, it's not a what would it be, an openly known secret that there is a large level of permeation in the cartels in just about every aspect of Mexico. So yeah, to some degree, you are training people you might end up fighting. And having done that, I would like to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, and remember we had that really great example. It was all over the press. It was like the government spent $500 million and trained this small group of Syrian men. I don't know, it was like 40 or 50 guys, and they all defected in like the first 2 or 3 weeks. That's it. So they took the weapons we gave them, the supplies, the skills, and were gone. I mean, and we spent $500 million on that. It's a crazy thing.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. What are you hearing, slightly off topic, but I mean, it still has to do with Mexico. Some of the stats are startling as far as the number of interactions that they're having at the border. And I mean, startlingly low. As in, Border Patrol agents and administrators basically saying, we're in single digits on some days, where it was into the multiple thousands on the days before. Do you really think that few people are crossing, or are they finding more creative ways? What are you hearing as far as people trying to work their way into the U.S.?
Well, I do think we have a huge success and the numbers gone down, right? I think I even saw the figure that the illegal immigration population in the US decreased by 1.6 million since these operations started. That's a huge number, right? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people who really didn't have resources and couldn't get over the border easily are done, right? I don't think those people are coming anymore. So I do think we have some people showing up with legitimate cases. And
Mhm.
then you said the bad actors still have their routes, right? There's still the tunnels and the unique ways or the diversion through Canada if they need to, unfortunately. So, like an Al Qaeda is still going to get people over. Poor people from Guatemala aren't, right? And so we have to now then tighten. So the bad guys also are like the borders closed and they don't feel that way yet.
Everybody, let's be real with each other for a second. Most doctors do not care about optimization. They do care about you, but they're checking your basic labs. They tell you that everything is looking normal, and they're going to send you on your way. Meanwhile, you're feeling tired, your performance is slipping, and you know that something is off, and that is where Marek Health comes in. Marek Health isn't your typical doctor's office. They're a next-level health optimization platform that actually listens to you, runs advanced lab testing, and helps you optimize your hormones, your metabolism, and your overall performance. So whether you're looking to boost your energy, maybe gain some muscle mass, or you just feel like you're not your best self anymore and you want to change that, Marek gives you those tools and can help you make it happen. You have two options. You can go with their guided optimization program and get a dedicated health coach and medical provider to help you with supplements and prescription treatments. Or if you're more of a do-it-yourself type of person, you can order self-service lab tests and take control of your health on your own terms. The best part is, either option that you pick, you can get 10% off of your order right now. Just go to marekhealth.com and use the code Focal Point at checkout. That's MAREK health.com with the code Focal Point for 10% off. I've done some interesting episodes. They're not published yet on the change agent side. And it was interesting, fascinating, actually. I talked to a journalist, and he was specialized on the breaking story of the illegals program in Brazil and how it's getting unwound for the Russians. Literally yesterday, I talked with a guy who was one of the illegals in the U.S. And I'm like, okay, this is a little fascinating. I actually know a little bit about this topic. But the Brazil one got me thinking, because Brazil was never the target for what Russia had going on. It was a way for them to gain an identity that they could travel the vast majority of the Western world. And one of the questions I had for the journalist was, well, how does an intelligence agency or apparatus or CBP or all of these that are combined? I mean, somebody shows up with a legit Brazilian passport, which is damn near as powerful as the U.S. passport where you can travel visa free. How do you combat that?
It's so complicated. I don't know if you saw last year, they put out kind of that bolo for the Iranian assassin, and he had a Venezuelan
Oh,
passport. But the photo they put out of him was really, it was like from The Sims or something. I don't know how you could ever identify him.
hell yeah.
Anyway, problem, right? Yeah. So when you go to these locations, so, I know the terror side very well. So Al Qaeda's using Turkish, Syrian, Afghan, and Venezuelan passports. Okay. So when you go to these places, they give you a real passport in a
Yeah.
fake name. So that's going to swipe just fine. It's not going to come up in the systems as being fraudulent. And that's a really difficult part because then you need to see the backstopping documents. So the driver's license, the birth certificate, the equivalent of like a national identity number. But even in those countries, they're making those as well. So then you can hand that over. So it is a complicated thing we have to get on top of. And a lot of it's going to be secondary and asking questions and getting them to trip up on their background or not even being able to speak fluently from where they say they're from. But as you know, that takes a lot of work, a lot of
Yeah.
skill sets to make happen. So it's very complicated.
Yeah, the guy I was talking to, so he was a Russian illegal, but he was a German-born citizen, and he essentially said it's almost impossible for Russians to lose their accents. So they actually deeply recruit for people that are adjacent and have that language ability. It worries me though, and I don't ever want to be an alarmist, but I live 60 miles from the Canadian border, and I have been paying more and more attention about. I mean, it basically looks like a mowed strip of grass through the forest that separates Canada from the United States. And I'm a helicopter pilot, and so I flew my wife up to Calgary not too long ago, filled in all the paperwork, all this stuff. But there's nothing stopping me from not doing that as well. And
Hmm.
if you could have, I would like to believe that Canada mirrors the U.S. in, like you're saying, these put people into question. Like, that's odd because you don't speak this language, or you're getting those other information. We're trying to get them to trip up. But if they can get into Canada, they can get into the U.S. I'm sorry, and you're probably not even going to need documentation. It's just a really porous, incredibly open border. And again, I hate to be an alarmist, but and again, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about crime or terrorism, but if I did, this is not a difficult Rubik's cube to figure out.
Yeah, and Canada has actually less vetting than we have, right? So it is the easier place to go legally
Yeah,
and then do what you want, right? Because it's actually better to be legal, as you know. You'll get less scrutiny, you have real
totally.
documents to show. So that is why Canada's always been a preference of terrorists. The Millennial Bomber came over the Canadian border, luckily. The Border Patrol were alert then and saw something because that would have been a disaster. So yeah, this is a constant problem. The issue is the politics a little bit. So the new administration has kind of pushed back in Canada, being like, you got to stop these terrorists from coming over our northern border and this fentanyl, because there's a huge fentanyl flow.
There's
And
only been 10 pounds, Sarah. I don't know if you've seen the reports from
so
Canada.
not true.
1%. Well,
Not true.
it depends on who you get your information from. Because again, I've done episodes with people who literally are interfacing with the cartel, who have seen fentanyl laboratories up in the Vancouver area. But from the government, it's like, no, it's 1%, less than 1%.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize these precursors are going into Canada, into labs, and then they're coming here. So there's
Yeah.
even a step in the middle you could intercept. The problem is Canada took it so personal, and we said, hey, you got to tighten up this border. You got to respect our sovereignty as well, that they went like so far the other way, made it this huge deal. So the negative is it really showed Canada does not prioritize protecting that border, right? And that's a problem, especially because a lot of people are diverting up there now because they're concerned about the southern border and getting over it as easily.
It's so vast, too. And a lot of it is wilderness. I mean, yeah, I'm friends with some Border Patrol guys up here. And again, not to give away any means or ways of how they do stuff, but a lot of it is reactionary, and it's much later. They're not sitting there in a sniper hide watching people come across. They have ways to kind of track stuff, but there's no real way to intercept. And I guess that leads to a question. Does that mean at that point we have to rely incredibly heavily on human networks to get information? Because if you get into the US, let's say somebody went into Canada with legal documents, say they sourced it in Venezuela, but they realized, why risk it at the US border when they could cross without even maybe necessarily bringing those documents with them? So they cross. How do you track that person? I mean, is it SIGINT? Is it human? You'd have to be aware of them to want to track them with SIGINT anyway. Like, that to me is where these gray people really can just start to just disappear.
Yeah, well, the way I look at SIGINT, it's almost off the table then, because now they're in the US and they get
Yeah.
considered a US person. So unless you can go to a FISA court and show all the evidence they've done something when they're probably preparing to do something, you're in a tough spot. So yeah, it's human networks. The problem we have then there, it's FBI human networks. And for a long time, FBI networks have focused on, hey, let's get this grouping together at a mosque. Let's find the one kind of radicalized random one. Let's see if he develops in his radicalization. He kind of becomes a lone wolf. It's a little bit of entrapment, and they're not mapping out these large networks. So the chance of them catching all these people is very, very small, right? Because like Al Qaeda is not coming over the border and calling an FBI informant to get a gun.
Yeah.
So we're in a tough spot. Like, we don't really have the right enforcement agency in the US to be really infiltrating these networks. We don't have like undercover at the level it needs to be able to be inside of a terrorist network and not, be second guessed, right? You have to spend years in these camps overseas, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I collect in camps in Afghanistan, right? I mean, the smallest thing that they're suspicious about, right? And so you now have these terrorists who are well chained, especially on covert influence, hiding their identity, and then you're gonna send this 22-year-old guy, who FBI put into a mosque at them. It's just not going to happen. They're at a different level. And that's what concerns me, is we aren't taking that piece serious. And that's why we aren't good at the Russians who are taking these identities, the Iranians who are taking these identities, or the terrorists. It's a big problem.
What I mean, by doctrine, you know, the FBI is supposed to be internally looking. The agency is supposed to be externally looking. Would they almost need to create something specific? Because it would kind of need to be a blend of both, because a lot of this is external coming internal, but then internal communicating external. What would you think would be the most effective way to actually track that?
Yeah, I mean, they set up kind of like the JTTF model for that, and then they do joint operations. The problem is, it's like you almost need an organization that is their job, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have that. We say FBI does it, but most people know that's not what they do, and it's not even what they're good at, right? So I don't think it exists yet, you know, whatever that's going to be, but it is almost the concept of a human organization on U.S. soil that gets very complicated, as you can
Yeah.
imagine, because America's like, we don't want you collecting on U.S. soil. We don't want you to collect here. But when you let 14 million people in the country, you don't know who they are. Well, who is going to identify them and collect on them and then tell you who they are, right? We don't actually have that body that exists right now.
Yeah, I try not to think about it too much late at night because I like to sleep.
Ghosts. Who are these guys?
I've never heard this before.
Right behind me, we have armed police. They're ready for sort of riot patrol.
I'm Sean Ryan, and I'm hosting the new Ironclad original, Target Intelligence PSYOP.
We're not framing history correctly.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
An Ironclad original.
An Ironclad original.
An Ironclad original.
Ironclad original.
An Ironclad original.
An Ironclad original.